Minister of Human Settlements Thembi Simelane has told emerging contractors that the introduction of the groundbreaking Emerging Contractor Support Initiative will ensure transformation in the human settlements value chain becomes a reality. Minister Simelane made the remarks during the official launch of the Emerging Contractors and Developers Incubator program. Joining us to discuss this program further is the National Finance Corporation CEO Azola Mayekiso. Good evening, Mr. Mayekiso. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, the minister has been quoted as saying, pardon me, Miss Mayekiso, the minister has been quoted as saying this initiative will most certainly grow the participation of aspiring developers in that value chain. Just take us through this incubation program. Please unmute Ms. Mayekiso.
Initiative, and it's a strategic intervention on the part of the NHFC, precisely because we've seen that emerging developers do battle a lot with respect to packaging their transactions such that they are ready for funders to evaluate for whether or not they are financially viable, therefore can be funded, or the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. So what we are trying to do with this particular intervention is to ensure that we are able to provide that technical support that is required, for the emerging developers to be able to package their property transactions properly, to ensure that ultimately, they are fundable. So we're going to help them package their transactions to a point of bankability. And once the transactions are bankable, and that is the bit that the NHFC pre-investment, that is the part that we are going to fund with our own funds out of the coffers of the NHFC. We will also additionally pay for, market demand studies. And this is a very important, aspect that most emerging developers cannot afford to do for themselves. So we are going to help them, pay for those market demand studies to prove, the demand for the property projects that they want to, develop in those areas that they've identified. Then post-investment, once they have successfully packaged bankable, projects, the incubator is also going to help them with the capital raising for those particular projects. And obviously, the NHFC as a financier in the affordable housing space, we are going to play a very crucial role with respect to making sure that this funding is then made available for these projects. But we are not going to be the only financier that supports these projects. Other financiers are also welcome to participate. Then post the funding, during the construction phase in particular, the incubator is also going to assist by providing, that technical support once again to ensure that the emerging developers are able to deliver projects successfully. So we are helping them start developing a track record of success with respect to successfully delivering sustainable human settlements, obviously, in the affordable housing sector. And then the last aspect, which is post the construction phase, they are also going to be assisted depending on what project they are bringing, to life. If it's a sales product, they're going to be assisted with the marketing as well as the sales of those particular units. And if it's rental products, they will be assisted with the property management as well as the asset management of that rental stock. Mm-hmm. Importantly, post-investment, it's the projects themselves that will fund, all that additional support that is required.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, you're going to provide hands-on, on and off-site support throughout the project lifecycle. So given that this is a mammoth task, how many business people can you take on into this specific program?
Yes, so what we are going to do within the MTEF period, so it's for the next 3 years, we are going to enroll 60 incubates into the program. However, this is a function of the kind of funding that we have set aside as the NHFC. But certainly because we know that the demand is quite high, the intention is to reach out to other DFIs, who are of a similar mind as the NHFC, who want to provide this kind of support to emerging developers. I'm thinking the likes of, perhaps let me not mention any names, we have already approached some DFIs and they have already said, look, they are happy to join us in the effort, and to the extent that we are able to secure that additional funding, then we will be able to intake a lot more than the 60 that the NHFC is planning to take on in the next 3 years.
I'm sure, Azola, many just listening to you now are already keen to participate or to be among the participants. So talk to us about the criteria and which designated groups will you mainly be looking to benefit?
So we are going to mainly benefit, firstly, majority Black-owned, emerging developers, as well as emerging developers that fall into the designated groups. And what we are going to focus on, and obviously, I think designated groups is a broad term that encompasses women-owned businesses, youth-owned businesses, businesses owned by persons with disabilities, as well as businesses owned, emerging developers owned by military veterans. We are not necessarily going to discriminate, but there are specific set-asides, that as a sector, that are targeted particularly at women. So women, we are certainly going to prioritize, and in fact, we are also in the process of entering into an MOU with SABC, whereby they have a special program that they are running for women developers, emerging developers as well. So we are also going to be making a contribution towards supporting SABC with what they are doing. In terms of the criteria, participation criteria, so we are looking for emerging developers who have projects, so it's quite important that they must already have a concept. And it's two broad categories of emerging developers that are going to be supported by the program. Startups are also going to be definitely, supported, but of importance is that the promoters within those startup companies need to have built environment experience. So it can't be that it's just going to be anyone who now, because this program exists and they suddenly have an interest in property, they need to have already garnered experience in the built environment. They would have been employed in any of the, the established developer companies, or they would have garnered experience, for example, as contractors having built some units already, and they are looking to effectively now pivot into becoming emerging developers. We are going to definitely, be supporting those, that category of emerging developer, as well as emerging developers who've already been in the game, but perhaps have been thus far just been used to developing small projects and are wanting to scale up their businesses. We are also going to support these emerging developers.
I just want us to be a little bit more granular. Pardon me for interjecting there, just for clarity. So when you say startup, talk to us about the turnover. How much should they be making per annum?
So it's companies effectively. I mean, if you are a startup, you're a startup, right? You are not generating any revenue, and therefore there won't be any expectation on our part for you to have any financials, as an example. Because, if you are a going concern, typically these are the things that we look for, that you must produce your financials so that we can see the financial strength of your business, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are a startup, you don't have anything to show us, but all the kind of background checks, that are standard when we are evaluating a client, a potential client, things like your credit record, that we are going to look at. And obviously we will look at your experience. We will look at, in terms of your company, do you have a board, for example, that has relevant skills, finance skills, built environment skills, etc. So it is startup in the true sense of the word.
So in the literal sense of startup here, because you were saying that you don't want people who might be hearing our conversation today, they go and register a company to say it will specifically deal in property because they heard there's an opportunity. That would essentially be a startup then. But you're saying it's immaterial if perhaps you have already started to make money, their financials, because then it creates this gray area a bit.
No. So I think maybe don't misunderstand me, because it is startup in the true sense of the word. But the differentiator here is that you need to have built environment experience. So, you can be registering a company, and you would have, for example, have been working for a Baldwin, right? And that's where you would have garnered your experience. And you are now wanting to start your own company as an emerging developer. We will be able to accommodate you. But I think what is important to mention is that we are not going to, we are going to accommodate startups quite gradually, and our main focus is going to be in terms of the split, is going to be people who have already been doing it and are looking to scale up their businesses. And we did explain this when we were doing the launch, that we are going to intake the startups in a very phased fashion, because we obviously want to ensure that whatever lessons get learnt, as we are working with them, we can then make improvements on those, so that the next cohort of startups that we take on, we have already, there are certain things that we are going to be doing differently, because we would have learned from the first cohort of startups. And so the number is going to increase, albeit gradually, of the startup category. And then, because part of the reason we are doing this as well is to try and address the affordable housing backlog in the country, right? It's important for us to help those that are already in the sector, have been operating as, call it, micro developers, to help them scale their businesses so that they do bigger and bigger projects, but they do them successfully, so that we can start chipping away at this housing backlog. So that's also part of the reason, and it's a very important one that we need to address.
All right. I suppose it is heartening that you're not only looking at the micro developers to move them to the next level, but as you say, you're also looking to work with those who might have worked for other property companies and are essentially startups in the true sense. So they will not be excluded from benefiting from this incubation program. Azola, thank you very much for all of that. That's National Finance Corporation CEO Azola Mayekiso talking to us about that incubation program.